Hello and welcome to a special interview for VIT Today. We have with us the Member of Parliament for Rajasthan, Mr. Digvijay Singh. He is also currently the National General Secretary of the Indian National Congress and formerly the Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh. So it's a delight to have you on the show. We want to start off with a perhaps open-ended question, I would say, because we wanted to get your take on what the political climate in India is right now, in the sense that India has seen a lot in just a small period of time. The last 3 months, we have seen the Ayodhya Puja, we have seen the border clash with China, we have seen lockdowns and unlocks. And in essence, the country has gone through a lot in just a very small period of time and in a very abrupt state. What do you think is the current political climate, and what is your opinion on what's happening in the country?
First of all, I'm grateful to you all for having chosen me to interact with young students from Baroda Institute of Technology. And I would like to point out that I'm no longer a General Secretary of the AICC. I used to be. For 13 years, I was the AICC General Secretary. From the questions you have put, I see a definite political, I would say, bent of mind in sort of putting questions to me. So therefore, my first, I would say, advice or suggestion rather, because today the youngsters don't like to be advised; it's rather a suggestion. So, so my suggestion is, first you must know the diversity of this country, and until you understand the diversity of this country, we are multi-religious, multi-caste, multi-ethnic groups, and for the first time in 1,000 years, we've got India up with such large boundaries. Otherwise, it was a disintegrated states into different princely states and British ruled states and earlier. So therefore, the barrier has been broken in the 1947 when India became independent. So therefore, you must realize the idea of India. You have to understand the socio, economic, political scenario as it stands today in India. So therefore, I will give you 2-3 instances where, starting from Adi Shankaracharya ji, he toured the whole country to bring all the religious Sanatan Dharma religious groups into one form and set up the 4 Peeth, north, south, east, west, which sort of brought all the people together. Similarly, when Mahatma Gandhi came to participate in the national struggle for freedom, he went to meet Gopal Krishna Gokhale ji. And Mr. Gopal Krishna Gokhale is another stalwart of the Congress party then. He advised him that if you want to participate in the national struggle for freedom, then you must tour the whole country. So my first suggestion to you all youngsters is first try to understand the diversity of this country, and that is our strength. Now the questions you have put about in the last 3 months, what has happened in Ayodhya, border clash with China, lockdowns and unlocking, etc. They are the current issues which I think we should understand. The political scenario as it stands today as to what and how we should react to these questions. As far as Puja in Ayodhya is concerned, it's a long-standing dispute over 150 years, which had ups and downs. And finally, everyone had agreed that we shall abide by the court order. And when the court order came, everyone supported the construction of the Ram Temple. But the very fact that we, and I particularly, and the Congress party particularly, and we have never sort of brought religion into politics. And this has been the core idea of India. We have in our Sanatan Dharma and Indian history also, we have accepted people, adopted people who came from different religions. Christianity, Christianity came to India first in Kerala, then before it went to the other European areas. Similarly, Islam came about 1500 years back, and we accepted them. So the idea of acceptance and tolerance is the basic idea of India. And this is what is I call the strength of India. The idea of India, the strength of India, is the spirit of accommodation and peaceful coexistence, which is necessary for any country to progress. Now, religious fundamentalism and use of religion in politics is divisive. This religious identity that my religion is better than yours is something which brings acrimony and hatred, which leads to violence, which I think we should be very careful about. Sarv Dharma Sambhav has been the core idea. Sarv Dharma Sambhav means equal respect to all religion, is the core idea of India and the core idea behind the Sanatan Dharma. This is what Swami Vivekananda also defined our Sanatan Dharma as such. And this has been our stand, that we respect every citizen of this country to follow the religion of his faith, and there should be no interference. That is the basic principle from our Indian constitution. So therefore, let Ayodhya or any religious issue, let that not be a political issue. It is a matter of faith, and it should be decided. Everyone has got a right to practice and follow the religion he wants to adopt or he's adopted. Now, as far as the border clash with China is concerned, the point is that there is the China border has not really been defined as such because of the geographical conditions. So therefore, it is line of actual control. Now, line of actual control has been defined over the years, and there's been an understanding between the China and India. Over the years, we had skirmishes, we had war in '62 and later skirmishes. Now, this is something which is very fundamental, that we have to put the things in the right perspective, because you can't make friends when there is a dispute in the neighbors on the borders. Even maybe in Vellore, if the two adjoining houses, there is a dispute in the fence, 2 feet this side or 2 feet that side, there's bound to be acrimony and dispute. So the basic principle is that we have to resolve the border dispute amicably. And those days have gone when there was I would say, imperialism, where people would try to take over the countries, I would say, the physical presence in the different countries. Now it is economic imperialism. Everyone wants to use the markets. Everyone wants to use their products to be marketed in the world over. And this is what China's main strength has been, that they have been able to sort of market their products at a cheaper rate throughout the world. And that's why they are surplus in their exports. So now this is definitely a different issue. So we have an issue on the actual line of control with China. And then now the economic issues have also come in, that why should we allow our markets to be used by Chinese products? So this is a separate issue. The third issue of Corona and the COVID-19 and the handling of the COVID-19 is something which if you see as a hindsight, we came to know of this by late January. And Mr. Rahul Gandhi had raised this issue in February, on 12th February, that this is going to hit us very hard. This is because uh, this is one of the fastest spreading virus, and therefore the mortality may not be so much, the fatality may not be so much, but yet we have to be careful. And even till 13th of March 2020, the health minister of government of India said, no, there's nothing much there, we will be able to control it. So that the understanding and the perception which the government of India had was totally, I would say, they underestimated the spread of coronavirus. And even the Prime Minister said we'll be able to deal this issue within 21 days. Mahabharat was won in 18 days. So now, this is something which is probably misunderstood or underestimated by the government of India in Delhi. At the same time, what is COVID-19? It's basically is a cough, cold, then fever, and it mainly affects those people who already have some, I would say, disease, whether hypertension, high blood pressure, kidney or liver problems. So they are the vulnerable sections, and people of my age, 70 plus, they are vulnerable to all this. But if you are fit and healthy and your immunity levels are high, you need not worry about it. But the decision of a complete lockdown, national lockdown. First of all, we are a federal country. In a federal country, the authority to effect the national lockdown is with the state governments, not with the government of India. So without taking the chief ministers of different states into confidence, the Prime Minister unilaterally decided and gave us only 4 hours. He's very fond of only giving 4 hours. He did that 4 hours in demonetization and did 4 hours here also. So in a country of 1.3 billion people, 130 crore people, if you give them only 4 hours for a complete lockdown with cancelling all kinds of transportation, was, I think, a very hasty decision. And therefore, we saw a huge migration, a huge, I would say, difficulty faced by the migrant labor. At the same time, families, students who had been within India studying in different cities, and even our students abroad, they were held up and they faced a lot of problems during the lockdown. So therefore, lockdown could have been better managed. And then even the opening of the lockdown, I think this unlocking of the lockdown should have been more planned. This is what I'm saying. In fact, I had suggested instead of a national lockdown, they should have gone for a targeted containment areas throughout the state. The physical boundaries of a police station would have been ideal if this lockdown had to be done. This would have been easily managed because the major, I would say, spread of COVID-19 has been in slum areas and urban areas. And in the rural areas, it has not really spread. So therefore, we should have concentrated. A very remarkable, I would say, comment was made by a lady who used to serve as a maid servant in Mumbai. She told Barkhadar that you people, big people who travel by air, brought COVID-19 from outside India, and you have sort of put us on the streets. Humko pedal kar diya. This is the basic thing that we should have managed the control of the spread of COVID in a much better way, because we all know that vaccine is nowhere in sight. The only, I would say, treatment in COVID-19, as I understand, is the supplement of oxygen in patients, which has been very successfully done to some extent in Madhya Pradesh. There's a very senior medical practitioner called Dr. N.P. Mishra, who had said that the only thing you should do is to immediately put anyone who is having a breathing problem should be put on getting a supplement oxygen this thing. Other thing is, I think every family who can afford it should keep a thermometer and the pulse oximeter at home. And if your the absorption level of oxygen is over 95%, then there should be no problem. But the moment you go below 95, then you should immediately go for your COVID-19 test. So basically, I don't want to be too critical on this issue. But at the same time, there are issues on which we should have been more careful.
Right. Delving into something a little more specific away from this broad spectrum question that we just asked. What we've seen recently is a growing dissent amongst key leaders within the Congress party itself, right? And this is something that's happened very recently with respect to how a lot of people are calling for reforms amongst the Congress party and how we should take things forward. So what is your view on this growing dissent from key leaders who would have otherwise been top leaders of the Congress party representing them everywhere else as well?
You see, Shreyas, you must understand that every political party has its own personality, and there's bound to be a dissent within the system. Every political party has got people who have natural ambitions, and this is something which has to be managed. So dissent management is a part and parcel of all political parties. But when huge sums of money are being offered as to MLAs to defect, that is something which was unheard of, unthinkable. 25 to 35 crores were given to the MLAs. Now, when you want to buy the mandate of the people by money, how will the democracy survive? So there was no problem as such within the party. There was no, if there was a dissent, it should have been obvious in the last 15 months of Congress government. There was no visible dissent. Suddenly, about 20 people board a charter flight arranged by the BJP and go off to Bangalore. And then we are not able to communicate with them. When I went to Bangalore as a Rajya Sabha candidate to meet my voters, I was not allowed to meet by the police in Karnataka. So this is all stage managed through huge money transactions given to the MLAs. And this happened in Goa, Meghalaya, Manipur, Arunachal Pradesh, Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh, and now you have seen in Rajasthan. In fact, today Rajasthan is debating the confidence motion. So this is something which you like to see. So when huge sums of money are being transferred and offered, this is what happens.
Right, sir. But if I want to jump into specifics, right, in your own state, you were Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh. In your state, we saw the same situation took place in Mrs. India, and then we saw the fall of the Kamal Nath government there. We saw the same situation rising in Rajasthan. So one has to question: is there a problem in the institution, or is there a problem in impatience of the leader? There has to be some. There are a lot of analysis going on, but as a congressman yourself who has been in Congress for so long, do you see there's a certain amount of change in the perception of the party or the perception of the leaders? There has to be some issue, right? And we wanted to get your take on that essentially.
See, basically, if there was a dissent, so there are forums within the party. The Congress organization, there is a forum. The Congress legislative party, there is a forum. No one ever raised an issue of dissent in the last 15 years of Kamal Nath's government. And suddenly, one fine day, we find all these people taking a charter plane and going there. So in Rajasthan also, I'm very happy that Sachin has finally come back. But The fact is that he was the PCC president, head of the Congress party in Rajasthan. He was the deputy chief minister also. If he had any problem, it could have been debated. He could have called the working committee of the Congress party as the Pradesh Congress committee president. He could have raised the issue in the Congress legislative party. He could have raised the issue in the cabinet if he had any problem. He could have raised this issue with the Congress leadership in Delhi. This was not done. He suddenly went off. But the wiser council prevailed. And now I'm very happy that today the Congress stands united in Rajasthan to defeat the BJP.
Right. So coming on similar tangent, at least with respect to this, what we're seeing recently is also a disconnect between the youth and the political party and the political leaders that are currently in present, right? Because as a 21-year-old student, what I'm seeing is a lot of people talking about unrelatable issues on the dais as compared to what is affecting us at a grassroots level. So how do you think this disconnect can be bridged in the future? And how do you think the youth can get more involved in politics?
You see, what I see today is the problem of unemployment, which is becoming bigger and bigger every day. We have to look at the quality of primary education to start with. And therefore, the present education policy is something which you have to also look at, whether it really promotes the quality of education in the new education policy which has been declared by the Modi government. Now, there's a even in remote areas in Madhya Pradesh and rural Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, there's a great hunger among the poorer sections to study, to give education to the primary schools, to the primary school in English. Primary, they all want English to be their medium of instruction. Even a person who is a daily wage laborer, he also wants to give his children an education in English medium. Now, because English is an international language, and people, when they go to a Hindi medium student, when he goes to a professional institution like engineering or medical or whatever, the whole course is in English. So the poor fellow, in the first 1 or 2 years, he has a problem to sort of understand what the issues are. So therefore, it is important to have a strong, I would say, quality education at the primary and the secondary level. I'm very sorry to say, I don't know about Tamil Nadu, but in another part of the country, at least in Madhya Pradesh, I can tell you, the quality of education in government schools is extremely bad. This is where I think the strong foundation has to be built for all youngsters. Then it has to be job oriented. The UPA government came out with skill development. We have unskilled people, semi-skilled people, skilled people, and then professional like you, who you will be getting out of the institution next year. So then you will be probably looking out for a job. Your parents must have taken education loan, so you have to repay the loan. So where are the jobs? Even if you see in the last 4 years, there has been hardly any growth, and it is reflected by no jobs coming in. More than 2.5 lakh seats in the engineering colleges have remained vacant. And not only that, more than 1,500 engineering colleges have closed down. Now that is a reflection on the poor economic growth of the country. If the economy doesn't grow, where are the jobs? And if there are no jobs, there will be discontent. Unemployment will grow as it has grown, and more so very aggressively in the last 6 months when the corona has come in, COVID has come in. So therefore, I think what is more important for any country to grow, there has to be peace and harmony in the people of the country. If there is no peace, if there is a dispute and hatred and violence, look at what has happened in Karnataka. one post on a social media resulted in, I would say, communal disturbance. Now, this is something which I said in my first opening remark, that the idea of India has to be of spirit of accommodation, respect to all religion, so that there is a peace in this country. Without peace, there is no economic growth, and without no economic growth, there are no jobs. So I think this is the most important thing which is facing this country today.
Right, sir. And sort of shifting this context from politics into policy itself, what we've seen recently is the new education policy that has been drafted. And in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic, when you talk about expanding the economy again, so in terms of policy, how do you think this can really help? Because how do you think the economy can still be stimulated again back in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic? And what is your thought on the new education policy, as you touched upon?
The two things. Now, recently, Mr. Dr. Manmohan Singh, which is one of the most eminent economics globally, who has written a very fine article. I think you should go through it, where he has suggested few steps where how economy can grow. The one of the suggestions which is given is you have to give money in the hands of the people, so that they have the purchasing power. And once they have the purchasing power, the issue is not of supply in this country. The issue is of demand. Until demand is there in the country, the country cannot grow. And how do you create demand? By giving more money in the hands of the people, money in the hands of the labor, more money in the hands of the farmers. Now, at one time, the farmers contributed about 60 to 70% of our GDP. Now it's come down to 14-15% GDP. But the number of farmers, people who are dependent on land, remains the same. So basically, the gap between the rich and the poor is growing. And this can bring a lot of social discontent within the country. And to add on, social unrest because of the religious fanaticism is something which will sort of boomerang on this country. And as a policy, education policy, I feel that you have to have a very strong education policy to improve the quality of education at the school level. And anyone who doesn't have I would say, who is not interested in studies, must be provided opportunity and the ITIs and the skill development centers to take the choices and give him training to have a job. Now, a MBA is also making the same kind of money as probably a very highly competent, I would say, plumber or a carpenter. So I would say that to sort of a basic issue of human resource development is something which has to be looked at. And I would compliment Mr. Rajiv Gandhi when he set up the Human Resource Development Ministry, which was looking at it. And skill development was a part. Now, why? Very few people in South Korea and in Germany go for higher education. Unfortunately, only 7 to 8% of our people of our students in India go for skill development. So it has to be pushed harder. At the same time, one of the very important issues is that of law-abiding citizen. Now, whenever people come to me, when I tell them, "Wait, this is against the law and against the rules," so the response is, "It is against the law and it is against the rules. That's why we have come to you, so that you can sort of give us a admission or give us a job, waiving the rule and the law." Now, following the law and the rule is the primary duty of every citizen, and our country will be more, I would say, would grow faster if we had this imbibed in us, that we have to follow the rules and the law of the land. Interestingly, in the Berkeley University, I had gone for a talk. One of the professors, he made a very pertinent point that Digvijay in US, politicians make money in framing the law and the rules, and in India, the Indians politicians, they make money by breaking the law and breaking the rule. So this is the fundamental difference which we have to look at in the Indian polity.
Right, so, I'll ask my last question before we just conclude this interview with your closing remarks. So, understanding from your last answer, you quoted Mr. Manmohan Singh's article, which is also a similar suggestion made by the Nobel laureate Dr. Banerjee and Mr. Rajan as well. When we opposed that same question to the CEA, Mr. Krishnamurthy Subramanian, in an interview, his stance was rather, he said, don't put money in the hands of the people because the people will not spend it. They'll keep it in their bank accounts, and hence it will not lead up to any net increase in the cash flow in the economy. And that is the reason, this was his basis for the argument, saying that is why we haven't done this. Now, would you agree with that thought process, or what would your counter argument to that statement be?
If you see the economic package announced by Prime Minister of 20 lakh crores economic package. Now that package is 90% of that package is a loan to the industry or the MSMEs or whatever. Now the first thing that MSMEs and industries will do if they get that kind of a package is to pay off their loans. It's not coming in the system. So therefore, instead of that, more money should have gone to the people who were in the need of the money. So they could sort of give them more purchasing power. This is what I mentioned to you, that the problem is not of supply in the country. It is the issue of demand. Until you create demand in the country and create an environment where people spend money so that they can run the wheels of industry, this will not survive. I totally agree with the report which you have mentioned by the Nobel laureates. At the same time, we should also look at the article written by Dr. Manmohan Singh, which has appeared, which he has suggested in the Indian context how the economy can grow post COVID-19.
Right, sir. Thank you for that remark. We'll conclude with the last question. We would love, if you love it, if you could just give us some amount of guidance and advice as to how the students can probably plan the next 2 or 3 years, seeing that there's a lockdown and there's a lot of uncertainty in everyone's life. So just your closing remarks and some advice to the students.
Well, as I told you, I'm not an economist, but I do sort of understand one thing. Until you give money in the hands of the poor, this will not work. Economy will not grow. When the economy doesn't grow, there are no jobs. And to have a better environment of investment and growth, you have to reduce social tensions in the country. The religious and ethnic, I would say, conflicts have to be resolved. That has to be put in the back burner rather than make it an issue. Now, this is something which is paramount for an economic growth, a socio-economic growth of any developing country. And that is why I say, when the idea of India is challenged, when the idea of India of religious harmony, like they say, live and let live, is challenged because my identity is better than your identity, my religion is better than your religion, is leading us to a situation where there's going to be a social conflict in towns and cities, which would undermine the environment of growth in this country.
Right, sir. I think on that note, we would like to conclude the interview. It was a delight conversing with you, and we're extremely honored to have you on the show. And wish you best of luck and good health.
My pleasure, and I'm always available whenever you need. You have my telephone number. Anything I can do for you, I'll be very happy. And keep in touch. God bless you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, sir. That's really kind
Thank
of
you,
you. Thank you,
Shreyas.
sir.